Hello and welcome to the YYC Soccer Podcast. My name is Jason Kmet and my co-host is Scott Strasser. Hi, Scott.
Hey, Jason.
And we've got Stampede coming up this week. Hey, Scott?
We do, yeah. It's an exciting time to be in Calgary, as always. Parade kicks off tomorrow morning. I'll be there to cover it for the Herald, which it will be a first for me. So I'm kind of excited, but I'll be getting up very early.
If you are a new listener to our podcast, Scott, what is the YYC Soccer Podcast all about?
So our podcast focuses on Calgary soccer. We talk about it at the amateur, collegiate, and professional levels. We discuss the teams and the players from Calgary's soccer community, from the grassroots and amateur leagues up to the university and full-fledged professional levels.
And this week we will review Cavalry FC's match against HFX Wanderers. They lost that match 1-0 on Canada Day. We're going to talk about Cavalry's upcoming match against Valour in Winnipeg on Sunday. Foothills WFC plays another UWS match this weekend. They play FC Arizona. And we're going to have an interview this week. Who's our interview with, Scott?
So we did a different kind of interview last week. You and I talked to Mike Barwigan, who is a FIFA-accredited referee. So first time we've had a ref on our podcast, and it was a really interesting discussion.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Mike is actually from the Lethbridge area, and he has been a referee for a long time, and he's had some really interesting insight into what it's like to become a referee. And we talked about a bunch of those things, including his upcoming appointment. He's going to be at the Paris Olympics here later this month. So we'll get to that in a bit.
This is Tommy Wilden Jr., and you're listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast.
Yeah, and before we run that interview, we'll start our episode with a review of Cavalry's 1-0 loss to Halifax on July 1st. Pretty disappointing outing overall out to the East Coast for the Cavs.
Yeah, I wasn't real happy with this result and the performance. Like when I watched the match, at least, I thought that Cavalry looked really good. They were kind of in control of possession. It seemed to kind of be building to something, but they had, as usual, kind of some close calls, but nothing happened. You know, they couldn't put it in the back of the net. What was your assessment of the first half, Scott?
First half was okay, but the second half, there was a bit of turning of the tide. Halifax got a goal just 4 or 5 minutes into the half after a poor giveaway by Cavalry forward Malcolm Shaw. Ryan Telfer got on the ball, dribbled toward the box, and honestly had a pretty nice shot. I thought he took this pretty well, but he snuck it past Marco Carducci, put Halifax 1-0 up, and Cavalry couldn't really get themselves back into the game afterward.
Yeah, I kind of felt that after that goal, they looked deflated. And, you know, can't really blame them, to be honest with you. It just seems like, you know, things just aren't coming together and things are not falling the way they want them to. But what were your thoughts about sort of their vibe on the field? What would you assess it as?
Yeah, there was definitely some frustration. I don't actually think, what did they generate? Like 1 or 2 shots on target? Like it wasn't actually a very convincing attacking push. You know, they did get on the ball and they looked to make chances happen, but there was really just a lack of creativity, I guess, or a lack of attacking impetus. So I wasn't too surprised that the match ended 1-0 for Halifax. It was interesting. Technically, it was Cavalry's first league loss in, I think, like 10 matches or something crazy. Like they've been unbeaten for a long time. The problem has been that so many of their matches have been draws that it's actually kind of hard to believe that.
Yeah. And, you know, but I thought, like, on balance though, like when you look at sort of how the match went, like it went along a very, you know, similar script. You know, Cavalry does not allow a lot of goals. They're pretty solid defensively, but every now and then a gaffe happens. And I guess that can happen sometimes, but there was the gaffe from Shaw. Wanderers totally capitalized on it. So, but again, this sort of falls into the same pattern that Cavalry has been involved with all year long. Their defense is strong, but then every now and then there's a gaffe and they pay for it.
Yeah, it is true. And it's surprising because they had so much They had such a scary looking offense in preseason. I feel like with all the signings they announced, it just felt like they were going to be deadly this year. And for whatever reason, it hasn't really clicked up front apart from Tobias Warshevsky, as we talked about last week. No one on Cavalry has scored more than one goal in league play this year. So it's a bit confusing. It's a head scratcher. And adversely, I think, I remember looking at the defense and thinking they were pretty thin in terms of the amount of depth they had throughout the back four. So the fact that they have been solid defensively, I think they've let in 11 goals, which is, not bad at all. That's like third best in the CPL, I think. And it's half as many goals as Valour has let in. Yeah, you're right. Defensively, Cavalry's done all right. They're letting in fewer than one goal a game. The problem is they're only scoring a goal a game. This was a game where I didn't, once they went down 1-0, I didn't really see them getting back into it. It is disappointing because obviously, yeah, like we've talked about, Halifax is a really tough road trip, but they are at the bottom of the table, right? Halifax has only won 2 games this season. They're on 10 points, down at the bottom with Valour. So it felt like maybe a missed opportunity to, at the very least, scrape out a draw.
They put in a reasonable effort and a reasonable push near the end. But even though they were pushing offensively, I kind of never really felt like that goal was likely to come.
No, neither did I.
Couple other notes about this match. Tommy Wilden Jr. was unavailable for this match. He wasn't in the dugout. Nick Ledgerwood took the coaching reins. It's kind of, I guess we'll talk about this more when we get to the preview for Valour, but our understanding is he'll be back for this upcoming week. So we hope everything is all been sorted away there for him.
Yeah. There was no real indication during the press conference on Friday morning that Tommy Wilden Jr. wasn't going to be making the trip to Halifax or be available to coach during the match. He answered the questions, and every indication was that he would be there. So I'm not sure exactly what happened. Must have been a personal or family related reason. But I think that was Nick Ledgerwood's first time taking the head coaching reins. I was trying to think if there's been another case where Tommy was maybe suspended or something, but I couldn't think of one.
I don't think so. I didn't look back, but I'm pretty sure that was the first time. So let's preview this upcoming match against Valour. Cavalry is going to be going to Winnipeg, and they'll be playing this match Sunday afternoon. And they go from playing one team that's below them to another team that's below them on the table.
Yeah, as I mentioned, Valour is kind of co-bottom at the moment, along with Halifax. They're both on 10 points. Valour, as I mentioned, has had a really leaky defense this year, 22 goals against. Same goals for average as Cavalry with 12, but they've really had a lot of struggles thus far. But of course, they have up until recently played the entire season on the road due to upgrades being made to their home stadium in Winnipeg. So they'll be glad to be playing at home, and this will be Cavalry's first trip to Winnipeg of 2024.
If I want to look at a silver lining for this season, despite all of the ties and the unluckiness with goals and that sort of thing, when you look at the table, Cavalry's in 6th place. They have 14 points. But if you look up the table, you can go all the way up to 2nd, and Vancouver FC has 18 points. So really, there is only 4 points separating 2nd to 6th. So it's really not lost yet, despite the fact of there's been these injuries and sort of this run of, bad luck or whatever you want to call it. So a couple good results, and, they're right back in the mix.
Yeah, as there often is, there's a lot of parity in the CPL this year, which keeps it exciting, and it does keep Cavalry in the pack, right? I think, what is it, top 5 teams make playoffs, so there's really not a lot of concern until maybe the last 8 or 9 games of the regular season. If you're outside of that spot, I think even last year, Forge wasn't the most convincing during the regular season, and they were kind of in that 3rd or 4th place spot for a lot of it, if I'm recalling correctly, but they showed up when it mattered most, which was in the playoffs. So Cavalry, they experienced the inverse of that last year, where they finished the regular season far above everybody else in 1st place and then faltered in the playoffs twice. So it's an interesting kind of mentality to have where you're stressing about being in sixth place at this point of the season. But of course, it's not where they want to be. It's not where they're used to being.
Ottawa is kind of pulling away from the pack, but everyone else is kind of all in the same group together, more or less. So hope springs eternal, I think.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, we may as well mention Atletico Ottawa's 7 points ahead of Vancouver FC. They've got 25 points. Very strong roster, as we've alluded to multiple times this season. But hope is not lost for Cavalry, and 2 or 3 wins in a row, and that puts them right back in the thick of things up there with Forge and Vancouver battling for second place.
So let's talk about injuries and roster moves, that sort of thing. So from on an injury standpoint, we last week finally saw Male Henry hit the pitch as a substitute. He's been out for the whole year with injury, so it was nice to see him back. Sergio Camargo also was back in action. He came on as a substitute, so I'm feeling pretty good about having Male Henry back.
Yeah, I think he is a creative attacking midfielder, and that is one of the ingredients that Cavalry needs right now. If you think about a player who I know we're going to talk about having left the team, Lucas Diaz, I think a lot of fans will prefer to see Henry back in the lineup. Didn't get to do too much against Halifax, but I do expect he'll have a pretty big impact on the team's attack in the coming matches, at least based on how he played last year.
Definitely. And we have a couple injury situations where it's not quite clear at this point where we're at. Brad Camden and Diego Gutierrez, we're not really sure where they're at in their recovery process. One thing that I was wondering about was Leighton Brooks was not in the lineup last week against the Wanderers, but I was able to find out that it was an illness. It's not any kind of significant long-term injury, and he is expected to be back in the lineup this week.
Okay, but one player we know won't be back in the lineup this week or at all this season, we found out via press release. Kind of suspected, but found out that Willie Accio is now on the out for the season list. So he's essentially been taken off Cavalry's roster for the rest of 2024.
That's, very unfortunate. But when he got injured in that match, I believe that was the Kelowna match, watching that, just the reaction when he came off the pitch, like he got injured very early on when he got substituted in, and he kind of tried to hobble around for a few minutes. But when he came back on the bench, like everybody was hugging him. Tommy went over and gave him I don't know if it was a hug or something like that, but I think it was pretty clear at that point. It was really serious. And I guess now we know that is the case.
Yeah. And it's disappointing. You and I have talked about how he hadn't been playing as well this year as he did last year when he joined the team mid-season and really became a spark plug for their first place finish. But he was starting to find his rhythm a little bit. He'd scored a goal and was starting to, I think, refine some of that confidence that he had in 2023. Definitely an unfortunate blow for the club, but also for him personally.
Absolutely. Let's stick with the Cavalry roster right now. So I guess we should probably talk about another player who is no longer with the club. It was announced this week that Lucas Diaz has his loan has ended and he is returning to his club, Sporting in Portugal.
Yeah, and I think, Jason, you can kind of maybe take some credit for inspiring Cavalry to release that press release about this, because you pointed it out that his loan was coming to an end, and you'd been asking the club what the deal was with that, and if he was going to stick around or head back, and then boom, they come out with a release that he is returning to his parent club. And as I did mention, I mean, Lucas Diaz had 2 great assists for Cavalry, right? Like 2 awesome passes that led to goals. But I think overall, he wasn't really able to do as much as I'm sure he wanted in the playing time that he did get. There were some matches where he seemed just a little bit nervous almost.
I'm going to give a shout out. I think we did this recently, a couple episodes back, to Sean Clark of the Foot Soldiers. The reason why I started to sort of get on this track was that there's a reporter for The Athletic who covers MLS, and his name is Tom Bogert. he put out a tweet saying that Lucas Diaz was on the radar screen of several MLS teams, and Sean Clark actually retweeted or responded to that, and I saw that, and that was kind of what inspired me to sort of look a bit further, and that's where I kind of found out the information that his loan was due to expire on June 30th. So it seems like we may see Lucas Diaz again playing pro soccer in North America, maybe even in the not too distant future. But I kind of agree with what you said. He had tons of technical ability, but I think playing in match situations was still something he really had to work on. He would get flustered. He just seemed to be lacking a little bit of maturity there. And, I think he's a player that in a year or so, he could really turn into something or not. You know what I mean? But he needs that game action and he needs that game experience. And he got some of that with Cavalry. But when I look at it right now in the grand scheme of things, having Maël Henry back in the lineup, I think that in a lot of ways, his return from injury will at least compensate or more than compensate the absence of Diaz.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, and I think quite a few Cavalry fans are, to be honest. But I do wish Diaz the best as he returns to Portugal. I hope he has a lot of success overseas.
Definitely. Let's talk about this new signing. I guess it's not shocking that Cavalry would be looking at some new players, but I'll let you take the ball and run on this one.
Yeah, it was alluded to in the press conference, the pregame press conference that Tommy Wheeldon Jr. gave before the trip to Halifax. They were going to be announcing a new signing soon, and it would be an attacking player. And with the news that Willie Accio is out for the season and Lucas Diaz is departing, that made a lot of sense because there is a little bit of space on the roster, and there's some reinforcements needed. We still don't know who it is as of recording this. Club will be announcing someone on Friday. I don't know if it'll be in the morning or afternoon. So by the time you're listening to this, we may already know who this new player is. However, they did tease the announcement with a brief video on social media today that would imply the player is German or speaks German based on the video.
Yeah, so in that video, what it basically shows is this new player walking towards Tobias Warszewski, and they have a very brief exchange of words, and it's in German. Yeah, I guess that's where we're at. So, do you have any thoughts?
I don't, to be honest. I know the exchange with Toby was obvious because he is from Germany, but I was wondering if maybe it was a former teammate of his. So the exchange is, I get to flex my German skills here. Toby says, Was geht Maschine? Willkommen in Canada, which means what's going on, machine? Welcome to Canada. Pretty easy to translate, but I didn't know if maybe he called him Machina because that was a nickname or something. So I was trying to find out if there was like a third division German player with that nickname or something. Warszewski's former club in Germany is primarily Preußen Münster. They were in the Dritte Liga or third division at the time he was there. So no idea, though. This player has blonde hair and presumably speaks German, and that's about as much as I can say for him.
Yeah, that doesn't really narrow it down very much. That's a pretty wide group of people in Germany. So.
This is Izzy Monk, and welcome to YYC Soccer Podcast.
So let's move on to Foothills WFC. They're playing another UWS match. It's going to be on Saturday afternoon, and they're going to play FC Arizona at Broadview at 3 p.m. So their previous match against Arizona was in Phoenix, the Phoenix area, and they won that one 4-0. So a rematch of that.
Not too many, to be honest. I didn't watch that 4-0 win. I just kind of followed along on social media. But overall, you have to expect that playing at home, Foothills is going to be the heavy favorites. And it seems like if you look at the division as a whole, FC Arizona hasn't caused too much trouble. They've only got one win from 6 matches, as well as a draw against Players SC, who's at the bottom of the standings, and that draw was their only point. So Arizona didn't seem to trouble Foothills at all when they were the home team. So I'm expecting a similar, if not wider margin win for Foothills. Overall, I was thinking like this this division this year was a little bit of a dud because Santa Clarita Blue Heat and Foothills are at the top of the table, and while Los Angeles SC has the same number of points as Foothills does, it seemed like a two-horse race from the start, and it seemed like a two-horse race that ended fairly quickly.
Yeah, agreed. It's kind of unfortunate that there's not another team in this division that seems to challenge to be on sort of that top level. But
I think the biggest positive is that there will be, a home game this weekend, because we mentioned in last week's episode that the June 29th game was canceled pretty last minute. I think that was against LA, and that would have been interesting to see how the teams in second and third fared against each other. But yeah, this will be the first home game for Foothills in over a month. It'll also be interesting to see who plays for Foothills. I mean, I know they've called up from League One already a few times, and I'm curious to see if that trend continues in this match.
Well, you got to look at it from the point of view right now that it's a very similar scenario to what it was like for the Foothills PDL club and or League Two, I guess they were at the time, when they knew they were going into the pro ranks next year with Cavalry. I think this is very much an audition for all these players about potentially signing for the Calgary Wild. So that part makes it interesting because as a team, there might not be much to play for, but right now, if I was on that roster and I was one of the regular players or I was one of the players called up from League One, I would definitely be really trying to showcase myself so that when next spring comes along, you get a training camp invite and or a contract offer. So,
and while we're on the topic of it being an audition year, are there any players on Foothills that have really made a name for themselves who we haven't already known about or talked about or had on this podcast in the past?
Like, I think the one name which I think is really intriguing is Kendall Showers. Kendall Showers, she is not like, when you look at the rest of Foothills WFC and for that matter, League One, she's an older player. I believe she's 28. So she's someone who has played at the U Sports level, but really she's somebody who really falls a little bit outside the typical League One and UWS demographic. But, she got the call from Foothills to go on that California road trip and play for them. And she scored a goal. I think she was the one who scored the one and only goal that's been scored against Santa Clarita Blue Heat. So, she's had a great year in League One. She's been at the top of the scoring stats and got this call from Foothills WFC. I'm curious to see if she'll be playing this weekend for them. And could she be someone who potentially gets a shot at the NSL based on her performance this year? I think that could be really interesting because as I understand it, she's kind of, soccer is not her sort of full-time focus at this point. She has a regular job and she's doing soccer in addition to that. So will she be a person that gets pulled away from her desk and back into the full-time soccer playing ranks? I'm really curious to see.
Yeah, that's a good shout. Few players I figured I'd give a shout out to. Grace Hannaford seems to have had a great season. And then a name that we've seen have some, I think this is her debut season at the UWS level, Reese Kincaid. I think she scored some goals and had some strong performances. I think she's just a high school age player. So definitely some opportunities for these, younger and sometimes not younger players to kind of make a name for themselves in what was kind of a rebuilding year for WFC.
This is Canadian FIFA assistant referee Mike Barwigan, and this is the YYC Soccer Podcast.
As we mentioned earlier in this episode, our guest this week is Michael Barwigan, and he is the first match official that we've had on the podcast, and it's a pretty cool interview, I think.
Yeah, we may have to tweak our that little blurb I always say about what our podcast is about. When we say we discuss the teams and the players, we may have to add in and the referees. But no, he has a lot of experience. He's been reffing for what did he say? He started in like 2012 or something like that.
You'll hear all about that soon, but he's been doing this for a while.
Yeah, and he isn't necessarily a Calgarian. He's based out of Southern Alberta. but he obviously refs a lot in Calgary. He's refed, all levels, including professional and international matches. He had a lot of cool stories about some of the experience he's had in terms of like travel and stuff like that. But no, he's going to Paris as one of the assistant referees to ref at the upcoming Olympics, which is super exciting. And yeah, I mean, I'll kind of let him speak for his career, but it was great to talk to him and get a referee's perspective on the game.
Yeah, we'll run that interview now. I'd like to welcome Michael Barwigan to the podcast. So Michael is a match official who has officiated matches throughout local areas nationally and throughout CONCACAF. Welcome to the podcast, Michael.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
How did you get started in your career as an official?
So that's kind of like a two-folded question. Number one, how do you get started as an official? That's probably the same way that everybody else does. I started when I was 12 years old out here in Coaldale doing the youth soccer, like the little, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old kids all swarming around the ball at the same time. And I started doing that when I was 12 as just kind of a way as like the casual job to earn some money and spending money to have around. From there, you just do your job and do the games every once in a while. And I seemed to enjoy that more and more as I was officiating. And so eventually some people kind of took notice of this, and it was like, okay, we can give them, more complex, higher level games and stuff. And so being in the smaller region in Southern Alberta here, just outside Lethbridge, there was more opportunities for higher level games. And as I got to, my high school and university days, I started doing the college and the university level games, as well as the Alberta Major Soccer League. And so people, again, just like any other team, when you're doing okay, there's like scouts, there's coaches. I mean, there's kind of the equivalent. And people are like, hey, this guy kind of knows what he's doing. And so eventually, I think it was in 2011, I got selected to go to a national tournament. And you can kind of, on the officiating side, equate that to like a selection camp. So it was like every province sends their top guys that they've kind of selected, and you kind of go through and do the U18 nationals at that time. And they kind of look down the list, and at the end of the week-long tournament, they go, okay, this guy's going to be invited to the national program, and, this guy isn't, or this is what this person needs to work on. And everybody kind of goes back home, and a few weeks later, you get a letter as an invite. So in 2012, I believe is what it was, I began officiating at the national level in Canada. And at that time, we had the NASL going on with FC Edmonton. And Ottawa was around, and there was the MLS teams. But the national guys don't do MLS games right away. So it was Canadian Championship, and it was basically NASL. And then a few years into that, you kind of continue to work your way like any other team. And in 2018, I got the call that I could join the international panel of assistant referees. And so that is the short version of a very long story.
I'm noticing like it's not too dissimilar from a player's career progression in a way.
No, it's very much like you start locally, you kind of work your way up. I think one of the things that maybe is a little different than players is just the sheer number of people who are applying to those positions. I think everybody has the dream when they're coming up as a kid to, kick the ball around and let me go score for the provincial team, the national team, or whatever. But as officials, I don't think many people are laying in bed at night, dreaming of raising a flag and calling someone offside or blowing the whistle or that. But, the system kind of really works the same.
So was there a moment where you thought to yourself, like, that you did want to pursue officiating at like a really high level, at the professional level? Or did you just kind of go with the flow as these opportunities?
It's kind of both. A little bit in the fact that I stopped playing pretty early. A lot of people who make it at the refereeing level kind of play a lot longer than I did. But I was enjoying refereeing when I was, 17 or 18. And I went, you know what? I could practice and play, 3-4 nights a week and referee 1 or 2 nights a week, or I could just referee and do that 4 or 5, which became like a dollars, kind of game at that same time. And then when I was, 18 or 19, there was a mentor in the area, and, we were doing a tournament and, doing the AMSL. I was being an assistant referee there. And he said, hey, I want you to think about this. Like, do you want to do this? Like, is this something you want to keep going? And I was like, that sounds fun. So I was like, sure, let's do this. And it was a little bit more go with the flow, but that was kind of the moment where, things started to pick up a little bit more. And I have to give credit. That's probably a lot to do with, I said yes. And then some people started having conversations going, okay, let's see if we can train this guy a little bit more, give him opportunities, or keep an eye on him that way in terms of the provincial referee program.
Why do you think being a match official is such a good fit for you? Like, is there something that you find that maybe is personality traits that that lend well to that role, or any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think so. I have a type of personality that likes digesting rules and stuff. In my free time, I play board games. So like reading a board game rule book is like my relaxing in the evening. And so I digesting rules and seeing how things fit together. That's kind of how that started when I was younger. As we get to a professional level, you get selected as like a referee or an assistant referee. And so when I went into that selection national camp, I knew even before I was going there, I had conversations with those that were making the decisions at the time. And they were like, are you like, you want to do this assistant referee thing? And I said, yes. That was rare actually for people to go there because everybody wants to be the guy in the middle. They want to have the whistle. They want to be, making the decisions. And there's a certain personality that kind of goes with that, with people who are in that position. And there's also a type of personality that goes with the assistant referee. I am definitely nowhere near as front and center on cameras or, big decisions or anything, but I'm still involved in the entire match the entire way through. And that kind of suited who I was as a person in terms of my personality. My day job is I'm a high school mathematics teacher. And so working with people and assisting and helping and answering questions and kind of all that behind the scenes stuff, that's what kind of suited me naturally. And so when I got invited as an assistant referee, I was like, okay, let's do this. And it just fit with my personality. I didn't need to be the center of attention. I didn't need the accolades or, all the awards or, everybody pointing out to be that person. I was like, I'm content making sure this game goes off as best as I can to my abilities and sort of just really enjoying the moment and helping others to look that much better.
Are you able to walk us through what a weekend match assignment would look like, especially at like the professional level when you get assigned to a program
Sure.
that you have to like fly to? I mean, when do you fly in? How does it work?
Okay. So I am hired by Pro Referees, which is the organization that oversees all of the assignments for MLS. And so I'm an MLS assistant referee. And so it's about 3 to 4 weeks out. We get an assignment on a Tuesday, and it's Tuesday afternoon. We get the email that gives us our assignment, which city we're going to. We can set our calendar. So when we are and are not available, we can block a certain number of times in the year. But basically, we get that assignment and we book travel. Nowadays we do it through an online portal. We book our own travel, we submit it. And as long as we haven't spent too much money and it's in budget and that, the ticket comes back the next day. And so, a few weeks pass. And then when it's match day on Friday, so depending on where I am going, whether it's West Coast, East Coast, Central Canada, wherever, I have booked my flights usually to avoid overlapping with my schoolwork as much as possible. So my school day on Fridays finishes at 12:17. And so at 12:17, I go to my car, try not to run over any students on the way out of school. And then I am in my car and I am leaving Southern Alberta here, driving to the Calgary airport. I get to the Calgary airport, drop my stuff off, and I will fly wherever I am going. So that could be arriving in city, usually depending on where it is and the flight. I'm usually in city by 6, sometimes up to 11 p.m., depending on time zones and where I'm going over the course of the weekend. So usually that's hopefully I've eaten somewhere in that time and it's off to bed, get a rest. The next morning, I try to sleep in a little bit. Time zones can play with you a little bit, but it's usually 8 or 9 local. Wherever I am in the country is up, and to the other officials on the crew who are breakfast eaters or coffee drinkers at the very least, we'll usually meet and discuss, life, catch up. We're all guys who see each other, at training camp or at tournaments or all over, but you don't always get to see. It's not like a team. We don't get to hang out with each other all the time because it's always consistent. It's always a different referee crew, or at the very least, there's some change among the people that were going. And so after breakfast, it's usually back to relaxing around the hotel, nothing too strenuous, maybe a walk around the hotel or downtown or wherever we are. Then it is lunch. And for me personally, we usually leave, depending on how long the car ride is, about 2 hours before kickoff, we'll leave the hotel to head towards stadium. So for me, that's about 3 hours. So match minus 3 hours. I am usually getting ready, making sure my bag's packed, shower, get everything ready. And then we head down and we'll head to the stadium. From there, it's the usual match day procedure where everybody gets there. We drop our stuff off and we'll check the field. We'll make sure everything's okay in the locker room and have a little chat with the crew, which we do throughout the day about the match, lineups, players who may or may not be playing at lunch and through the afternoon. And then at the stadium, right before warm-up, we'll have a final match chat and make sure everybody kind of understands their roles and the responsibilities for the day. Every referee does things a little bit differently, or they may want some communication a little bit differently, but we kind of try to line up everything we can efficiently as possible there. And then after warm-up, it's kind of everybody gets ready, jerseys are on, everybody gets focused and ready to go, and then we go walk out, and that's what you guys see on TV. So there's a huge build-up right to that moment where you see everybody stepping onto the field for the first time.
Congrats on your appointment to the Paris Olympics. That's pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah, that's pretty cool. My wife keeps bugging me because I'm not bringing that up all the time. She's like, that is insane. Like you should be telling everybody you bump into the street. I'm like, yeah, that's okay. I'm right now I'm kind of focused on finishing the school year, and that'll be like the to-do list in my mind. I'll get the school year done, get my normal job done. I got MLS games this weekend and next weekend, and we'll do that. And then I'll probably be like, starting to pack my bag to head to Paris there. And I'll be like, hey, this is kind of cool. This should be pretty good. But no, it's an amazing opportunity. That's a 3-man referee crew coming from Canada with Drew Fisher from Calgary, actually from Alberta here, and myself from Alberta, and then Lias Arfa from Quebec. We're heading over to Paris to participate there, and it should be a great experience. And we're looking to represent not only our region, but our country well.
That's a really cool opportunity, Mike. We have a couple of questions about the Olympics. So I think I'll kind of ask a couple in a row here, but
sure.
Do you get to stay for the length of the tournament? How many games are you assigned? And where do the officials stay? Because we all know about the Athletes Village.
So we are arriving a little over a week before the tournament starts. So we will be there at the beginning of the tournament, and our return tickets are at the end of the tournament. So we should be there, barring no unfortunate disasters, for the entire tournament. In terms of matches, we won't actually know what matches we will be doing until about 2 or 3 days before the match itself. And that's usually what happens at most FIFA events. You see the releases of appointments, you see them online, and everybody's like, oh, this referee, that, and how come we get this guy? And it's like, we're usually finding out maybe like 24 hours before that goes public to everybody else when we're in a tournament like that. So we'll find out a few days early, and then we'll travel, because I believe the matches are being held all over France. I saw the map that they were there. And so then we'll travel, probably be either, depending on the length of travel, either the day before or the morning of. I'm guessing the day before, but we'll see. And then the number of matches, that is to be determined. We won't know. It could be, you go in, you do one great job, and that's all you're needed, or you might get one. And it's just like any other competition. You're fighting for a certain number of lineup spots, really. And we go as a referee team. And we want all 3 of us to be performing at peak levels. And so obviously during the week, we're all training in that so that we're ready to go when that tournament kicks off. And then the people who evaluate either us in training before the tournament, or the training the morning while the tournament goes, or even the matches that we do, everything is going to be assessed, graded. There will be coaches and mentors meeting behind doors discussing which referees did well here. And then obviously which teams progress in the tournament is one of the things that affects our assignments. Obviously, we won't be officiating Canada men who are not there, but even the teams from our region generally is not something you will do. A couple times that rule gets broken, like if it's two teams from the region, then the referee from the region they might assign. But generally, if you have someone from, say, UEFA and someone from CONCACAF, you're not going to have a CONCACAF referee in there.
What about where you're staying? Athletes Village, Officials Village?
Officials Village. I believe FIFA controls the Olympics for us, so it's kind of like its own little subset thing. And I'm pretty sure it's in a package. I'm sure I got somewhere that I'll have to look at on the airplane or something when I'm heading over there. But we get picked up, and it'll be basically its own little hotel, and we'll be well looked after there. As officials, there'll be like meeting rooms and usually like massage and recovery and like training rooms and video review rooms where we see some match analysis and clips and stuff like that. And they kind of get us set up in a hotel off on our own somewhere. Where that is specifically, I'm not sure at this moment.
Paris is obviously such a cool destination to get to do a business trip. But and even though it is a business trip, and I mean, I know you talked about some of the training in between games or in the lead up to the tournament starting that you have to do, but is there a lot of downtime on trips like this? And do you get a chance to see like any of the sites or sample the city at all?
Usually there's a little bit of downtime. I've been to two FIFA tournaments before this, and my understanding is the Olympics is going to be kind of similar. But in the sense that training is usually in the morning-ish. We'll finish training, and there'll usually be debriefs of matches or classroom stuff. We'll do classroom stuff when we first arrive, but once the matches start, there'll be less. It'll be every couple days or so going over the events or that. So usually after morning training, you might meet with a coach or physio or something like that. But usually there's a few hours each day to kind of get out. It'll depend where we are and what we can get out and see. I had been to France before on a different tournament, but I wasn't in the Paris region. So it'll be nice to get out and at least see the city a little bit, given an opportunity, if we can fit that into the schedule and that.
Officiating can be tough. So, you hear from the players, the coaches, the fans. Like, do you have any advice or any words of wisdom to anyone who's thinking about starting to officiate matches?
Okay. So when you're starting out, I would say that all of that negativity that people are kind of screaming at you and stuff, that's generally something we want to avoid as much as possible. And so you want to make sure you have your support system if you're a new referee nearby. If that means, if you're really young, that your parent is around there for your first game or two, that's great. Just somebody there who knows what's up and is aware. Most clubs in regions usually have people to work with who are watching for those more negative interactions to avoid there. And so you want to use those resources and look towards, positive results with that. And as a new referee, you're human. You're not going to be perfect all the time. I myself, my very, very first game, I made a big mistake because I literally finished the course on a Saturday and was refereeing on Monday, and I hadn't actually made it to the store to buy myself a new stopwatch. And so I used my dad's analog watch, and I did the math wrong, and I actually cut the game short by about 5 minutes. And I think there was a parent there who pointed that out to me, and I didn't believe him at the time. But on the car ride home, I went, nope, I think I did that wrong. And you're not going to be perfect. But, on the flip side, you're going to learn from it. The players are going to be learning. The coaches are going to be learning. The more that everybody can kind of work together there, I think it's a better environment and opportunity for everybody to be involved. And I think it'll just grow the game and certainly support everybody in all of their roles.
But is there anything else that you'd like to mention or any shout outs, anything like that before we wrap up the interview?
I would say first that, what I do is unique and it's wonderfully fun. I very much enjoy doing it. But it is not something that I could not do without the support at home from my wife and family, as well as my workplace, because they have had to sacrifice some of my time away so that I can participate in these large events and stuff. So my school board has been extremely supportive in that regard. So that is definitely nice that I can thank them. And I would also say that anybody who wants to give this a go and try, I think it's totally worth it. It might not be for you, but you won't know if it is until you give it a go. And, sometimes the the competitiveness of just being a great referee is enough of a challenge to keep people around for many, many years to come.
Thanks very much for taking the time to do the interview. And, we wish you all the best on the rest of the season and of course, in Paris and beyond.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It was great to chat with you guys.
Hi, my name is Julie Sorokin, and this is the YYC Soccer Podcast.
So let's turn our attention to League One, and we have a few matches coming up over the next several days. Scott, you want to walk us through those?
Yeah, so it's been a pretty quiet last week or so in League One in terms of game action. There was just the one game in the men's division on Tuesday night, which was kind of an Edmonton derby. It was a 1-1 draw between St. Albert Impact and Edmonton BTB. But there are 3 games in the men's division coming up Friday, July 5th, so the day this episode is released. Only one of these matches is taking place in Calgary, however, and that's I think it'll be an interesting one, though. It'll be Calgary Foothills versus Edmonton Scottish, who have been at the top of the table pretty much all season. Foothills are not at the top of the table, but they have had a real resurgence and I think are coming into this match on a 4-game winning streak. And we'll mention on the women's front, obviously same kind of, they're all double headers, so similar matchups this Friday between Foothills and Scottish, Callies and St. Albert Impact, and then the youngsters, ASA High Performance, they'll be taking on Edmonton BTB.
Mm-hmm. So I think one thing we'll have to do maybe in time for next week's episode is once we have some of these games going on, we should work out some of the scenarios about who's going to qualify for the final and stuff. But we'll leave that till next week. Thank you for listening to the YYC Soccer Podcast. You can have this podcast downloaded to your device as soon as it becomes available by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or other platforms. Check our website at yycsoccer.com, where you can go through our episode archive and find other options to listen, including our new YouTube channel. We also have links so you can buy Scott's book online. You can leave a question or comment in the Contact Us section of our website. You can also interact with us on social media, such as Twitter or Instagram, where our username is YYC Soccer 403. Thanks for listening.